that there is a technical term for the industry which would tend to prescribe the amount of time between the question and the opening of the picture.
After more than half a century, the final resting place of Audie Murphy, the most decorated American soldier of World War II and Hollywood icon, was opened, unveiling discoveries that no one ever expected. For 54 years, his grave stood as a solemn tribute, untouched and sacred. But what emerged stunned historians, admirers, and the world alike. The revelations not only challenge long-held beliefs about his legacy, but also ignite fresh debates filled with mystery, awe, and disbelief. What was uncovered changes everything we thought we knew. The grave that wouldn't stay silent. In early 2025, Arlington officials announced a routine restoration of Audie Murphy's gravesite. At first, it appeared to be ordinary maintenance, but the secrecy surrounding the project was unusual. No cameras, no press, and heavy military oversight. Workers noticed the tense atmosphere as they carefully dug deeper than normal. Then, an unrecorded, weathered metal container emerged from the soil. Inside were 3 astonishing items: Murphy's faded combat division patch, a mysterious medal with unknown symbols, and most shocking of all, a handwritten letter signed by Audie Murphy himself, an unexpected discovery that left everyone stunned. This was no farewell to his family, nor a soldier's routine report. The letter was, in truth, a chilling message. Written in Murphy's own hand, it spoke of operations never acknowledged in official history. Missions so classified that the men who carried them out were commanded to live and die in silence. He described shadow campaigns where victory was measured not in medals, but in secrecy, where failure meant not only death, but complete erasure from existence. It was the kind of confession that could rewrite the understanding of Murphy's life and service. Yet the most haunting section of the letter had little to do with combat at all. Murphy warned of the future, a time when America's greatest danger would not come from foreign armies or outside enemies, but from within. He cautioned that if a nation ever forgot the pain, sacrifice, and scars carried by its heroes, it would slowly crumble. Courage alone, he wrote, could not save a country that abandoned those who had bled for it. His words carried the weight of prophecy, as though he foresaw a test of memory and honor that was yet to come. Attention also turned to the mysterious medal. Its unfamiliar insignia and odd design led some historians to suspect it was proof of Murphy's involvement in Cold War missions so secret they were never logged. Others whispered darker theories, that the medal represented an unacknowledged alliance or a covert group erased from public record. Whatever its meaning, it only deepened the riddle. Despite the military's attempt at silence, news of the discovery leaked within hours. Soon, the world was ablaze with questions. Why was this container hidden beneath his grave, locked away for more than half a century? What secrets had Audie Murphy carried to his final rest? And perhaps most unsettling of all, was his death truly what history had recorded? For years, people had accepted the official story of his 1971 plane crash. But whispers of inconsistencies had never fully disappeared. Witnesses near the crash site recalled odd details, wreckage scattered far from the main impact, flight paths that didn't align, and sudden radio silence with no clear cause. Alone, these anomalies were easy to dismiss. But in light of Murphy's buried letter and the mysterious relics, suspicion reignited with fresh intensity. Had America's most decorated soldier really perished in a tragic accident? Or had he been silenced, his secrets buried with him until fate unearthed them more than 50 years later? Let's delve into the details of Audie's early years as he prepared for a legendary silent. The boy who became a legend. In the dry, sun-baked backroads of Kingston, Texas, on June 20th, 1925, a frail boy entered the world. His name was Audie Leon Murphy, And though he would later become one of America's greatest war heroes, his beginnings were anything but heroic. To the few hundred people in his dusty little town, Audie was just another child of poverty, another mouth to feed in a land still weighed down by the crushing grip of the Great Depression. His parents were poor sharecroppers, living on land that wasn't theirs, trying to survive off crops that barely kept hunger away. His father, Audie Murphy, was a restless and unreliable man. Often, he disappeared for weeks or even months, leaving behind nothing but worry and unpaid debts. That left Audie's mother, Josie, a small but strong woman with an iron will, to raise 12 children on her own. She had no money, no comfort, and no partner she could rely on. Only her faith in God and her determination to keep her children alive. The Murphys lived in a weather-beaten shack that looked like it could fall apart any moment. Its thin wooden walls creaked and groaned whenever the Texas wind howled, and inside, the family faced nights of hunger and despair. Food was never enough. More often than not, survival meant the children had to work long, back-breaking hours in the cotton fields under the blazing sun. For young Audie, childhood was more about sweat, labor, and responsibility than laughter or play. By the age of 10, he was already hardened by life. School became a luxury he couldn't afford. After the 5th grade, he dropped out to shoulder the burden of work and help his mother. He was small, thin, and weak-looking, barely noticeable among the bigger farm boys. But behind his pale blue eyes burned something no one could see at first glance. An unshakable toughness, a quiet determination that nothing, not poverty, not hunger, not despair, could break. When the storm of World War II swept across the globe, Audie saw in it a chance to escape. Poverty had chained him to the dusty fields of Texas, but the war offered something more, a sense of purpose, a chance to prove himself. He wanted to fight, to be part of something bigger than his hardships. But there was one problem. He was too young. Refusing to be stopped, Audie lied about his age. He looked older than he was, and with forged documents, he convinced skeptical recruiters that he was ready. At just 17 years old, weighing only 110 pounds, he finally made it into the U.S. Army. Many soldiers and officers laughed at the sight of the scrawny boy in uniform. They thought the war would swallow him whole before he ever had a chance to fire a shot. But they were wrong. Terribly wrong. By January 1945, this wiry farm boy found himself in the icy woods of France, standing face to face with the brutal strength of the German army. Outnumbered, surrounded, and with his fellow soldiers in grave danger, Audie did something no one expected. While others would have retreated to safety, he climbed onto a burning tank destroyer, flames licking at his boots, bullets screaming past his head. From that fiery perch, he opened fire with a machine gun, holding back more than 200 enemy soldiers. For over an hour, he fought alone, refusing to surrender, refusing to retreat. When the smoke finally cleared, the battlefield was silent. Audie, wounded and exhausted, was still standing. His impossible courage had saved countless lives. By the end of the war, this boy from a Texas cotton field had earned 33 medals for valor, including the nation's highest honor, the Medal of Honor. He was only 19 years old. Audie Murphy had risen from obscurity and hardship to become the most decorated American soldier of World War II. His name was etched into the nation's history, not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the incredible strength hidden in the most unlikely of men. Yet, as remarkable as his wartime journey was, the story of Audie Murphy was far from over. What were his hidden struggles like? Let's find out. From broken marriages to courtroom drama. In 1949, at the height of his fame, Audie Murphy married the young Hollywood actress Wanda Hendricks. To the public, it looked like the perfect union of a decorated war hero turned movie star and a rising beauty of the silver screen. Yet, behind the polished smiles and flashing cameras, their marriage was far from stable. The pressures of fame, Murphy's struggles with adjusting to civilian life after the war, and the demands of Hollywood proved too heavy for the young couple. Just 2 years later, in 1951, their marriage came to a bitter end when their divorce was finalized. But life moved quickly for Murphy. Only 4 days after signing the divorce papers, he walked down the aisle again, this time with Pamela Opal Lee Archer, a former airline stewardess whose calm presence provided Murphy with a sense of comfort. With Pamela, Murphy built a family, welcoming 2 sons into the world, Terry Michael and James Shannon. For a man who had seen so much destruction during his time as a soldier, his children represented a new chapter of peace, love, and continuity, something he had longed for. Away from the movie cameras and public appearances, Murphy developed a passion for breeding quarter horses. He poured his energy into the Audie Murphy Ranch in what is today Menifee, California, as well as another ranch in Pima County, Arizona. These ranches became his escape, a place where he could immerse himself in the quiet beauty of nature and the rhythm of horse breeding. His horses even competed at the Del Mar racetrack, a symbol of his love for the sport and his desire to succeed in everything he touched. But ranching and horse racing were not just hobbies, they were expensive undertakings. Murphy invested heavily, often more than he could afford. Combined with a dangerous fondness for gambling, his financial situation grew shaky. By 1968, Murphy openly admitted that he had lost $260,000 in a risky Algerian oil venture that failed miserably. To make matters worse, he found himself under pressure from the Internal Revenue Service for unpaid taxes. For a man who had once been hailed as a national hero, the financial strain was a heavy burden, and yet Murphy was determined not to compromise his principles. At a time when celebrities often lent their names and faces to alcohol and cigarette advertisements for easy money, Murphy refused. Despite his struggles, he turned down such offers, believing that as a public figure admired by young people, he carried a responsibility. Promoting harmful habits was against his conscience, and he chose financial hardship over what he considered moral failure. Still, Murphy was not without flaws. He was known to have a fiery temper, one that often got him into trouble. Years of war, stress, and personal battles left him quick to anger, and violent altercations followed him throughout his adult life. Perhaps the most shocking incident occurred in May 1970 in Burbank, California. Murphy was arrested and charged with battery and assault with intent to commit murder after a heated dispute with a dog trainer spiraled out of control. He was accused of firing a shot during the confrontation, an allegation he firmly denied. For a man already fighting inner demons, the arrest painted a troubling picture. The trial gained public attention, with many shocked that their beloved war hero and Hollywood star could face such serious charges. Yet, after the dust settled, Murphy was cleared. Though he walked free, the incident added another layer to his complex legacy. He was not just the clean-cut soldier-turned-actor immortalized in films. He was also a man battling personal flaws, financial troubles, and an unpredictable temper. Proof that even heroes carry heavy shadows. Apart from these, his life was a roller coaster, filled with ups and downs. Could it be due to his military background? Let's dive further into the details of Audie Murphy's life of fame and battles. Fame, scars, and a death that raised questions. When Audie Murphy returned from the battlefields of World War II, he was not just welcomed home. He was celebrated as the very definition of an American hero. His bravery was unmatched. His story was larger than life, and his face became a symbol of courage across the nation. Magazines splashed his image across their covers, cities organized grand parades in his honor, and ordinary people spoke his name with admiration. For a country hungry for hope and symbols of victory, Murphy was exactly what America needed. Hollywood wasted no time opening its shining gates for him. With his rugged good looks and the authenticity of a man who had truly stared death in the face, Murphy was a natural star. He appeared in more than 40 films, quickly becoming a household name. Yet, his most unforgettable performance came in 1955 with To Hell and Back. In an extraordinary twist, Murphy played himself on screen, reenacting the terrifying battles and sacrifices he had actually lived through. The film broke box office records, pulling millions of Americans into theaters, and it sealed his status as a national icon. To the public, Audie Murphy seemed untouchable, unstoppable, a man who had conquered both war and fame. But behind the glitter of Hollywood, Murphy was fighting a darker and more personal battle. Today we call it PTSD, but in his time, it had no name, no real understanding, and no compassion attached to it. The war followed him everywhere. In the still of the night, he woke to the sound of invisible gunfire. In the silence of his mind, he saw the faces of brothers in arms who never made it home. Survivor's guilt weighed heavily on him, eating away at the confidence the world admired. He grew restless, sometimes suspicious of even those closest to him. The pressure of carrying such invisible wounds led to broken marriages, financial troubles, and angry outbursts that shocked those who only knew the smiling cowboy on screen. To the cameras, he was a fearless Western hero. But in the quiet of his own home, Audie Murphy was still standing on the battlefield, alone, weary, and haunted by ghosts no one else could see. Then came the tragedy that stunned the nation. On May 28, 1971, Murphy boarded a small private plane despite heavy fog covering the skies. Somewhere over Brush Mountain in Virginia, the aircraft lost control and slammed into the hillside. Everyone on board was killed instantly. Audie Murphy was only 45 years old, gone far too soon for a man so deeply etched into America's story. The official explanation was straightforward: poor weather and pilot error. The case was closed almost immediately, yet almost as quickly, whispers began to spread. Some pointed to his sealed military files, wondering if Murphy had been part of covert missions never revealed to the public. Others claimed he held secrets too powerful, too dangerous for him to keep. To them, the sudden crash was not simply an accident. It was too convenient, too neatly explained. When his body was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery, his grave became one of the most visited in the entire country. The headstone was simple, a white marker carved with his name, service record, and a list of medals that testified to his valor. But those who stood before it often felt there was more than stone beneath their feet. They felt it was a quiet witness, guarding something the world was never told. For more than 50 years, that grave remained untouched, a symbol, a mystery, a silent guardian of secrets, until the year 2025. What kind of burial did Audie Murphy get back then? What was the atmosphere like? Let's dive into the details of the quiet grave of America's most decorated soldier. A hero's farewell at Arlington. On June 7, 1971, America laid one of its most decorated war heroes, Audie Murphy, to rest with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. The ceremony was not only solemn, but also historic, drawing a crowd of distinguished figures and fellow soldiers who came to honor the man whose courage had inspired millions. Among those present were George H.W. Bush, then the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and later to become president, and General William Westmoreland, the Army Chief of Staff. Members of Murphy's beloved 3rd Infantry Division, with whom he had fought so bravely in Europe during World War II, were also there to say their final goodbyes. Murphy's gravesite can be found in Section 46, headstone number 4636611. It lies just across Memorial Drive from Arlington's Grand Amphitheater, making it a place of both prominence and quiet reflection. Over the years, so many admirers and curious visitors have come to pay respects that a special flagstone walkway had to be built leading directly to his resting place. Today, his grave is the second most visited site in Arlington, surpassed only by the eternal flame that marks President John F. Kennedy's grave. This alone shows how deeply Murphy's story resonates with Americans. From veterans who see him as a symbol of brotherhood and sacrifice to ordinary citizens, inspired by his rise from poverty to national hero. Interestingly, although Arlington traditionally honors Medal of Honor recipients with gold leaf decorations on their headstones, Murphy himself had requested something far simpler. He wanted no lavish engravings, no symbols of superiority, just a plain, unadorned stone, like that of an ordinary soldier. It was his way of remaining humble, even in death, as he had always done in life. Yet, the headstone does carry one unusual detail. It lists his birth year as 1924, a date tied to falsified records he had used when enlisting underage to fight in the war. This small but striking detail reflects the daring determination of a young man eager to serve his country before he was technically old enough. The memory of Murphy's tragic end in a plane crash was also preserved in other ways. In 1974, just 3 years after his passing, a large granite marker was placed near the Appalachian Trail, not far from the crash site, so that hikers and passers-by could pause and reflect on the hero lost there. The following year, in 1975, justice was served to some extent when Murphy's widow, Pamela, along with their 2 children, was awarded $2.5 million in damages from the accident, a sum intended to compensate for the profound loss of a husband, father, and national figure. Murphy's legacy, however, extends far beyond military recognition. In life, and even after his death, he was celebrated with numerous civilian honors. Hollywood, where he had once flourished as an actor, awarded him a star on the Walk of Fame. And in 2013, decades after his burial, his home state of Texas bestowed upon him its highest military award, the Texas Legislative Medal of Honor, further cementing his place as both a state and national treasure. Audie Murphy's grave may be quiet, marked by a simple stone, but his story continues to speak volumes. It is a tale of bravery, humility, and enduring honor, one that still draws people to Arlington to stand in silence before the final resting place of America's unlikely hero. There was something interesting about Audie Murphy that remained unknown to many people. Can you guess what this is? What could be interesting about him, outside being a military veteran and a Hollywood icon? Let's dive into the details. Audie Murphy's secret creative side. During the process of writing his memoir To Hell and Back, Audie Murphy's hidden talent for poetry came to light in the most unexpected way. His co-author, David McClure, stumbled upon scraps of handwritten verses casually discarded in Murphy's Hollywood apartment. These were not the polished lines of a practiced poet, but raw, heartfelt expressions that revealed a side of Murphy far removed from the public image of the decorated soldier and Hollywood actor. McClure recognized the depth and authenticity in these words, and one of the poems, titled The Crosses Grow on Anzio, was later woven into the memoir itself. Interestingly, it was not credited to Murphy but rather attributed to a fictional soldier named Kerrigan, a choice that reflected Murphy's modesty and his tendency to hide his softer, more personal creations behind other identities. Only a handful of his poems survived, yet they give us a rare window into his soul. Among them are Alone and Far Removed and Freedom Flies, In Your Heart Like an Eagle. The latter carried a powerful message of patriotism and resilience. Murphy himself used it in 1968 during a speech at the dedication of the Alabama War Memorial in Montgomery. Its words resonated so deeply that it was later adapted into a song by songwriter Scott Turner under the evocative title Dusty Old Helmet. This blending of poetry, memory, and music immortalized Murphy's voice in a way beyond his battlefield heroics and movie roles. Although Murphy never pursued a career as a musician, music played an important part in his life. He was particularly fond of country music and admired artists such as Bob Wills and Chet Atkins. Yet, unlike many of his friends in Hollywood, Murphy never tried to sing or perform. Instead, music became another quiet avenue of connection, something that reflected his roots and his love for simple, heartfelt expression. It was through his close friendship with singer Guy Mitchell that Murphy's world intersected with the creative circles of songwriting. In 1961, Mitchell introduced him to Scott Turner, a songwriter and composer with a keen ear for blending story and melody. This meeting sparked a collaboration that lasted throughout much of the 1960s, stretching from 1962 to 1970. Together, Murphy and Turner crafted a collection of songs that captured themes of longing, memory, and heartache, subjects that Murphy knew intimately from his own life. Though Murphy was not a trained musician, he contributed deeply to the lyrical content. His words carried the raw weight of his experiences, shaped by both the battlefield and the quieter struggles of civilian life. Turner then transformed these verses into songs that could be performed and shared with a wider audience. Among their many works, two stood out for their popularity and lasting charm: Shutters and Boards and When the Wind Blows in Chicago. Both pieces found success and brought Murphy recognition in yet another field, songwriting. Something few would have ever expected from a man best known as America's most decorated soldier of World War II. In poetry and music, Murphy revealed a softer, more reflective side of himself, one that contrasted sharply with his rugged on-screen persona and legendary military record. These hidden artistic pursuits remind us that behind the medals and movie stardom was a man who felt deeply, remembered vividly, and expressed himself in words that continue to echo long after his time. Audie Murphy's life, though short, is one that leaves legacies to be explored, which made the discovery not only shocking, but equally mysterious and full of lessons. Let's take a dive into the details of the unearthed message. A legacy buried, a message unearthed. Audie. Murphy's story feels less like history and more like a breathtaking legend brought to life. He began as a poor farm boy in rural Texas, running barefoot across dusty fields with no hint that greatness awaited him. His childhood was marked by hardship, struggle, and the kind of poverty that often crushes dreams before they can even take shape. Yet destiny carved a different path. With unshakable determination, immense courage, and a will stronger than fear, Murphy transformed from an overlooked country boy into America's most decorated hero of World War II, a man whose bravery would forever blur the line between myth and reality, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire generations. His bravery on the battlefield earned him not just medals, but immortality in the hearts of a grateful nation. When the war ended, he carried his fame into Hollywood, where he transformed into a screen icon, playing roles that often mirrored the heroic figure the world already believed him to be. But as the decades rolled by, whispers began to circulate. Audie Murphy, the national hero, was not simply the shining figure of victory and valor he had been portrayed as. Beneath the surface, hidden under medals and movie lights, was a man carrying burdens too heavy for anyone to see. His scars weren't just physical. They were wounds of the soul. He lived with memories of war that haunted him long after the fighting stopped, secrets he never fully revealed, and warnings he tried to pass on before his untimely death. When revelations tied to his grave began to emerge more than 50 years after his passing, they suggested something deeper and far more unsettling than what history books and films had ever shown. Among the discoveries were cryptic messages, a letter unlike any ordinary war record, and a strange medal whose origins raised more questions than answers. This wasn't the tidy story of a hero the nation wanted to celebrate. This was the story of a man trying to send a final plea, a desperate warning that perhaps no one wanted to hear at the time. His letter was not a simple account of missions, battles, or victories. Instead, it read like a haunting reminder that nations are not only destroyed by the enemies they fight abroad, but also by the failure to care for the very men and women who sacrifice everything in their defense. Murphy seemed to know, perhaps too well, that behind the parades and honors lay a system that often forgot its own. His words were like a prophecy meant for the generations that would come after him, a reminder that neglect could be just as deadly as war itself. And then there was the silence. The military officials who might have clarified the mysteries said nothing. The records that could have explained the strange metal and the cryptic language remained locked away or deliberately altered. It was as though his legacy had been carefully managed, shaped into a story the public could accept, while the darker truths, the warnings, the scars, the doubts were buried alongside his body in Arlington National Cemetery. But history has a way of unearthing what was once hidden. Today, over half a century later, these truths seem to be clawing their way back into the light. Audie Murphy's grave has become more than just a place of honor visited by admirers and historians. It now stands as a symbol, a marker of mystery, of unanswered questions, of truths we may not be ready to face. It forces us to ask, what else have we not been told? What other warnings have we ignored? The choice now belongs to us. Do we once again bury the mystery, wrapping it up in silence and patriotic storytelling? Or do we finally confront the voice that still seems to echo from beneath the soil? A voice that belonged not only to a hero, but to a man who desperately wanted his country to listen. Because some messages are too powerful to suppress, too vital to dismiss, and too important to be hidden forever. Audie Murphy's story is no longer just about the past. It is a challenge to the present, and perhaps a warning for the future. So, what do you think about Audie Murphy's struggles that were hidden behind his fame? Could his death be more than an accident? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.